Hey, hello, and welcome to my channel. As you can see from the title today, we're talking about 2001 A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick's epic film from 1968. And in particular, we're looking at the death of the astronaut Frank Poole that happens in the latter part of the film because I've always felt there was something strange about that scene. And today we're going to take a look at it and see if we can discover what really happened to astronaut Frank Poole. Well, I guess first we should jump to the first time we meet Frank Poole and his fellow astronaut Dave Bowman. They're on board the Discovery 1 ship on their way to Jupiter to investigate the origin of a strange signal that has been detected from the moon, where a large black monolith type object has been dug up and is supposedly 4 million years old. So, 18 months later, our ship Discovery 1 is on its way to Jupiter with our astronauts on board. And here is where we meet Frank Poole in a pretty famous scene of him running around the turning centrifuge, trying to stay in shape during the long space voyage. This is actually quite a long scene with no dialogue, but has some thoughtful music. Also, notice that Frank is running by several crew members who are in hypersleep pods. Supposedly, they are alive, but in a deep sleep. When we meet fellow astronaut Dave Bowman, he is getting some processed looking food. We see Frank also eating this strange food while watching a news program on a small screen. But the two guys don't say anything to each other. I've said before, I find it odd that these guys only have each other for company, but barely speak to each other. Also, this is where we find out that Dave is mission commander, and Frank is referred to as his deputy, Dr. Frank Poole. So I guess Dave outranks Frank. After Frank gets a birthday message from his family, we see Frank playing computer chess with the HAL 9000 computer. Of course, HAL is the supercomputer on board the ship that is supposedly infallible and can't make a mistake. Overall, I think Frank comes off as a more normal and likable guy than Dave, who just seems a bit odd, like here, where he is sketching the sleeping crew members. When there's a malfunction outside the ship, Dave goes out to fix it in a little pod ship. Dave must spacewalk to fix it, or at least that's what we're told, while Frank watches from inside the Discovery 1. When Frank and Dave check the malfunctioning part back inside the ship, they discover there's nothing wrong with it. So, was Hal mistaken? Or is something else going on? It seems they might have been misled about their actual mission, but the astronauts are also starting to look stressed out. We then get the famous lip reading scene where Frank and Dave get inside one of the pod ships to try and have a private conversation that Hal can't hear, or so they think. But apparently, Hal was able to read their lips as they discuss possibly disconnecting him. Frank and Dave are obviously worried. Things aren't going to plan. Frank is decisive here that the HAL 9000 would need to be shut down if it is malfunctioning. I have to wonder if this would give Hal a possible motive to want Frank out of the way. After a short intermission, we get immediately to a scene of a pod leaving the ship. No dialogue, no explanation. But as Dave is now inside the Discovery 1 watching, this must be Frank out in the pod, possibly going to check more on that part that may have been malfunctioning. And Hal is apparently watching too. To be honest, this is a strange scene, as I'm not sure how Frank is supposed to get back into the pod out there by himself. We then get the strangest scene where the pod Frank was in now turns towards him, arms outstretched, then a small close up on what appears to be Hal's eye. And then we just see the small screen that Dave has been watching. And out of nowhere, we see Frank flying uncontrollably through the air, being flung out into space. Then we see Frank grabbing frantically for what appears to be his oxygen hose, and it looks like it has been cut, and he can no longer breathe. Did the pod with outstretched arms pull out Frank's air hose? Did Hal do it? We then see Dave running to go help, and then, bizarrely, we see Frank and the pod ship tumbling wildly out into space. So the pod ship no longer has controlled movements? Notice, Frank is no longer moving here either. What just happened? Because for a while, I was even thinking about a Dave did it theory, but I don't think Dave killed Frank. We can see Dave does go out to try and retrieve Frank's body, although he isn't able to bring him back inside because Hal won't open the pod bay doors. These are our last shots of Frank, as Dave has to let him go to try and save himself. This shot of Frank is oddly through an egg-shaped window. Dave ends up having to break his way back onto the ship to shut down Hal. After Hal is shut down, Dave hears a strange video from Heywood Floyd that explains that the mission objective is something totally different than what they had been told, that the first evidence of alien life had been discovered, and this was really what the mission was about. But one of the most important points about Frank's death is this: he was killed by a machine. And I'm going to draw a direct parallel between the machine that killed Frank and the beginning of our film, in the Dawn of Man sequence, where our very first tool, an animal bone, is also used as a weapon to kill someone. I feel like Kubrick could definitely be drawing a line between these two scenes, from these advanced space machines all the way back to the earliest tools ever used. I suppose if there's murderous intent, almost any tool can be used as a weapon. So, what can we say about the strange death of Frank Poole? Was he in fact murdered? Well, it does seem like the answer is yes. He was definitely killed, and I think Hal is responsible for the most part, since he had started to malfunction, and like the astronauts, he had become paranoid. But could some of the blame for what happened to Frank and also to Dave be laid somewhere else? I think it can. Remember the video of Floyd that plays after Hal is shut down by Dave? If Heywood Floyd and the people back home programmed this video to play only if Hal was shut down, then they must have known that Hal was starting to malfunction, and they must have expected that one of the astronauts would have to shut Hal down. Why else would they make this video? Basically admitting that they had lied about the true mission. So, in a way, I think the authorities back home really bear some responsibility for what happened to Frank and to Dave, since they were kind of being used, like the canary in the coal mine. Well, that's my new video about the strange death of astronaut Frank Poole. Hope you liked it. Sorry if my voice is a little scratchy today, but I'm a little under the weather here in New York. Anyway, I'm definitely working on something special for next week, and I hope to have that up soon. Also, thank you for so many interesting comments under my videos. I always like reading them. And you can hit that subscribe button if you like. It does help my channel. But either way, my name is Shim. Thank you for spending time with me, and have a great day.
Well, what do you think?
I'm not sure. What do you think?
I've got a bad feeling about him.
You do?
Yeah. Definitely. Don't you?